I must pause to thank the Seprod Foundation for their continued commitment to the education of our students and for the work that you have been engaged in philanthropy work. I must commend you for the work that you have been doing over the past years and how you have partnered with CASE to advance the education of our young people. I must speak on the perspective of food security, opportunities and challenges. I'm going to ask that you allow me to share screen.
Yes, certainly. Melissa, Shannon, can we facilitate that, please?
You should have, you should be able to share now.
Okay, thank you. Moderator, fellow panelists, special invited guests, awardees, ladies and gentlemen. My perspective on food security challenges and opportunity for agribusiness will dovetail quite into what Mr. Pandui presented earlier. And I just want to set a background or perspective on food security. And food security, as is projected on the screen, exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. And this should meet their dietary needs for an active and healthy life. Now, what are the 4 pillars of food security then? Food availability, access, utilization, and stability. And this has been very important, as is outlined by FAO Food Security Policy of 2006. Now, according to the FAO organization, state that food security nutrition in the world 2020, prior to COVID-19, 2 billion people did not have regular access to food. And over 690 million people were already undernourished. And the pandemic has added another 132 million people to the category of undernourished in 2020. Now that is significant. What is the Jamaica's outlook then? Jamaica, as a net importer of food with reduced agricultural production in recent years, remains vulnerable to high international food prices. And overall, we have had 9% increase in main food commodities between February and September 2020. 9%, and that is significant, especially for the vulnerable group. What is the global outlook on this? So the global food system has faced ongoing sustainability challenges. About 27.6%, which represents over 800 million people of the global population, is living in moderate or severe food insecurity. And many countries still face persistent childhood stunting alongside rising rates of obesity. And that is attributed to poor nutrition. What is the Caribbean outlook? The Caribbean as a region remains susceptible to an increasing frequency of natural disasters, rising international debt, migration, rapid urbanization, and high imports to meet the basic needs of food. And therefore, over 67.5% of the population in the Caribbean is living in moderate or severe food insecurity. Those numbers are significant. This is what the Jamaica food export and import bill looks like over a period of 4 years. So what I drafted is the cause impact response model. What are some of the causes of food insecurity? And these are some of the challenges. A rapid increase in world population marked by hotspots, urbanization and aging. And that also affects our food security issues. Diverse trends in economic growth, family income versus are unable to afford, and 9% increase in food is significant for persons who have a low income or persons who are between or below the poverty line. Pricing affects the ability for persons to afford resources for production and also afford nutritious food. And that has an impact on education. We have seen over the years, as Mr. Pandu said earlier, the reduced agricultural productivity for many crops and animals, and the demand remains the same. We have also seen the impact of pest and disease dynamics on food and food security, but the demand for food remains the same. Increased conflict, as is with the war with Russia and Ukraine, crisis and natural disasters, impact food security. Again, the demand remains the same. And poverty and inequality, the cost of food and the ability of persons to afford also pose a challenge for food security. The dietary transition affecting nutrition and health. As we age, we have different nutritional needs. Young people have different nutritional needs. Are we able to afford nutritious food? Are we food secure to feed our people? Are we food secure to afford them the dietary needs that they need at various stages of their lives? Structural changes in economic systems and employment implications. Markets have shifted, and this dramatic shift can result in labor and capital shift to other industries. And this also affect the quality of food, the amount of food or the quantity that we're able to produce to feed our people and our country. Increased migration. Persons move into different areas, persons move across borders, and that affects the ability to produce food in the quantity to feed our people. And the demand again remains the same. Advanced food production systems and resulting impact on farmers' livelihoods. The ability for farmers to afford the innovations and the technologies that are available also impact food security and persistent food losses and waste, which Mr. Pandu spoke to earlier. Our post-harvest loss is too high. So we have to look at ways to mop up those wastes and look at ways to store. I don't think Jamaica has proper storage facilities so we can utilize the excess when the supply is greater than the demand. And that also affects our ability to be food secure. So what are some of the impacts? Low levels of energy, both for different age groups, growth failure, delay in maturity, impaired cognitive ability. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Because currently in our primary high schools, they have a breakfast program, a lunch program, based on the economic ability of some of our households, based on their ability to purchase nutritious food, or even basic food items, basic commodities. Children in these situations find it very difficult to learn. And you can identify with that, because really, can somebody learn on an empty stomach? And so it reduces the capacity to learn, and sometimes lead to behavioral issues in our schools. And so the breakfast and the lunch program that have been implemented to assist our students, we also have to take a look at the nutrition value of those food items that are being fed to our students in these schools. And that transition into colleges or tertiary education, because there are students who are unable to just afford basic food. What CASE has done is that we have provided our students with 3 meals per day. And that, of course, relieve the problems of those who might not be able to afford nutritious food or basic food. Less ability to resist infections and illness. And that will affect, of course, our employment, affect our educational system. And we can see how the health and wellness issues that we have in our country, obesity, some of the various diseases that persons suffered from. Some of that can stem from the kind of nutrition that persons, the kind of food that they consume, and also reduce life expectancy. And then there are others: feeling of alienation, stress and anxiety, reduced productivity, decrease in work participation in school, as I said before, and the performance of these students. And perhaps we have to do an investigation to look on how really the kind of data that supports the decrease in work participation and cognitive ability in schools, that where persons do not have access to basic food commodity or nutritious food, and reduce income level. So what are the opportunities, therefore? There needs to be stakeholders collaboration. The agribusiness communities and producers actually should look at the daily food requirements and the quantities needed and to take up the opportunities to feed our people at least 3 times per day, 3 meals per day. And so we have to look at those opportunities that are there. The academic community should also seize opportunity to educate our people of the need to respond to the food requirement of our growing population. And we have to identify the food gaps in the supply chain, as my first panelist stated, where education and business can frame problem-solving strategies to look at where the gaps are and how can we fill these gaps so that we can feed our people. Policy framework. There should be good policies to combat food insecurity by the government and private sector together. And it should be a collaboration, a collective and bargaining effort by all stakeholders. And this needs to be seen nationally and must not be sectoral, but have a national framework that will impact our country and especially our young people and the educational system. There needs to be increased budgetary support to the national forage movement to enhance its program by establishing clubs in all primary schools. What I've recognized, and the information is anecdotal, but what we have recognized so far is that the forage movement is not as robust as it used to be. And we have to take a look at what is happening within our primary schools. But I've also had an insight that in private and prep schools, the movement towards forage is picking up, if you will. And so we need to have robust implementation of agriculture in primary curriculum. And the use of technology can assist in these areas where there are limited space. What happened is that the National Standards Curriculum has an agricultural component, but it is not mandatory. And so schools they have an option to do the agricultural component or other component of the curriculum, because the curriculum is holistic and it does not mandate any particular school to do one component or the other. However, I must point out, though, that in high schools, the agricultural component of the National Standards Curriculum is embraced. I get to understand from data from out of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information that up to 150 high schools of 171 engage and embrace the agricultural component of the National Standards Curriculum. But we are not seeing that number translating or that number transitioning into tertiary education. And so a small team of CASE will be investigating what is happening, where are the gaps, and what needs to be done to fill those gaps. Because we would want for that number, based on the exposure that they are getting in high schools, to transition into tertiary education, at least a significant number, taking up agricultural science and agricultural education as an option. Advance a partnership between the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, our college, RADA, and other agricultural-related organizations to design, develop, and implement in urban areas rooftop farming projects across Jamaica. And that will assist in our food security issues lobby the Ministry of Education to advance the process of mandatory teaching of agricultural science in all high schools. Again, I must point out that it is an option, and though 150 of 171 seem significant, it still is an option for schools to take up agricultural science as an option, and deliberate and structured way to be knowledgeable on the opportunities that are there. And so I know time is going to provide increased budgetary support to CASE to enhance its training of agricultural science teachers, certification of and targeting of small farmers. And because we know that small farmers are educated, if they are certified, then certainly that can drive the supply chain. Advance aggressive collaboration through research of all the tertiary institutions in Jamaica to foster a holistic approach to combat the effects of climate change that impacts our food security. And therefore, others could be sensitize urban communities through informal education to the need to utilize green spaces, expanding the curriculum at CASE, but that is going to need some resources and affordable technologies and innovations for our farmers. We also need to, and I must point out, that the public education campaign that targets householders and nutritional dietary needs of better food choices will also assist in what they choose, and therefore will help to drive the supply chain for these basic food commodities to feed our nation. And in conclusion, I must point out, as Mr. Pandu stated, that there needs to be a deliberate shift in the thought process of our people at all levels to see the business of agriculture as the alternative to financial independence and the driver for food security. Thank you, moderator.